Limitless Art is the story of a girl who, with hands empty of anything but determination, conquered the world of colors and showed everyone that no limitation can stop the flight of dreams. To hear the full story, follow us. Stay with us till the end of this inspiring journey, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Part 1, A Fateful Birth. The sky was heavy with rain. Thunder roared, splitting the night, and the air smelled of fresh earth. In a small hospital, the cry of a newborn filled the room. But when the nurses placed her in her mother's arms, a deep silence took over. The mother's hands trembled as she looked at her baby, a girl born without arms. The father, standing in the corner, took a step forward. He glanced at his wife, then fixed his gaze on the child. A lump formed in his throat, but he said nothing. The nurse whispered softly, "She's healthy, but—" She didn't finish. The mother forced a faint smile and held the baby closer. "Her name will be Arena. She will be strong." But the world is not always kind. As Arena grew up, she felt the weight of people's stares. In the streets, children looked at her with curiosity, whispering among themselves, some even. One day, when she was 5, she watched her brother, Kian, drawing in his sketchbook. The colors, the lines, the shapes, it all fascinated her. But when she looked at her, empty shoulders, a sadness filled her heart. That night, her mother held her close and said, "There are many ways to create beauty, my dear." And with those words, something sparked inside Arena. She decided that she would not accept any limits. But how could a girl without arms really become an artist? Part 2, the first step toward art. Arena didn't know where to start. At home, she often saw her brother's pencils and sketchbooks, but how could she draw without hands? One night when everyone was asleep, she quietly climbed out of bed. Kian's sketchbook was on the table. Carefully, she picked up a pencil with her lips and tried to draw a line on the paper. But the pencil slipped and fell. She tried again, another failure. Tears welled up in her eyes. The next morning, her mother noticed the sketchbook filled with messy lines. She smiled, and without saying a word, placed a small paintbrush in front of Arena. Then she opened a container of paint. "Try with your feet." Arena hesitated, but as she gripped the brush between her toes, a new feeling filled her. Gently, she dipped it in the paint and touched the paper. A small blue mark appeared, something like a drop of water. Her mother encouraged her. "See, you can do it." That day, Arena practiced again and again. First, she made simple lines, then small shapes. She failed many times, but she never gave up. Her toes ached, but her heart was full of hope. A few weeks later in school, the art teacher was checking the students' drawings. Arena remained silent. She had never told anyone she was practicing. When it was her turn, the teacher asked, "Where is your drawing, Arena?" She lowered her head. Should she tell the truth? Or maybe... Suddenly, her brother's voice came from the back of the classroom. "Miss, Arena can draw, but in a special way." The classroom fell silent. Everyone was waiting. Arena took a deep breath. It was time to show her courage. Part 3, Revealing a Hidden Talent. Arena hesitated as she stepped forward. The stares of her classmates felt heavy. She picked up the brush with her foot, dipped it in paint, and moved it across the paper. A few seconds of silence followed. Then one of the kids exclaimed, "Wow, she's really painting." Something changed inside Arena. The teacher smiled and said, "This is amazing. Keep going." From that day on, Arena practiced with more confidence. With each painting, she improved. Even her teacher encouraged her to enter an art competition. But would people take her seriously? One day at the park, while Arena was sitting on a bench, painting, an elderly woman approached. She watched for a moment, then said, "This is incredible. You have a special talent." Arena smiled, but doubt still lingered. The competition was approaching, and she wasn't sure if she was ready. Could she compete against artists who painted with their hands? That night, her mother sat beside her and said, "It doesn't matter what people think. What matters is that you believe in yourself." Arena looked at her paintings. Maybe it was time to show the world what she could. Part 4. The Big Challenge. The day of the competition arrived. Arena walked towards the venue with hesitant steps. The sounds of the crowd could be heard from a distance, and her heart was pounding in her chest. Her brother, Kian, placed his hand on her shoulder and said, "Remember, Arena, you're painting for yourself, not for others." That sentence felt like a burst of energy. As she entered the hall, the smell of different paints filled the air. Other artists were preparing their works. Some were carefully moving their hands across the canvas, while others were painting with large brushes and great confidence. Arena felt small. She glanced at her canvas. It was ready. She carefully picked up the brush with her foot and began to paint. The colors slowly blended together. Each gentle stroke, each line, felt like a big step toward realizing her dreams. But suddenly, a few people in the crowd started to look at her and whisper. One of them said, "How can someone without hands paint?" The words hit her like a slap. Arena paused for a moment. Doubt crept into her heart. Could she really succeed against all these competitors? At that moment, she remembered her mother's words. "Believe in yourself." Arena took a deep breath and looked back at her canvas. This was not the time to give up. She pressed on, each brushstroke continued with purpose and faith. Hours later, when the time was up, Arena stepped away from her canvas. Her heart raced, but she felt something greater than any worry had taken root inside her. Part 5. The Unexpected Result. The judges walked through the hall, inspecting each artist's work with sharp eyes. Arena's heart raced as they approached her canvas. She stood still, trying to breathe, praying her work would speak for itself. One of the judges paused in front of her painting. He studied it carefully, then turned to his colleagues. "This is unusual," he said. Arena felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Would they think it was too different? Finally, the judge turned back to her and smiled. "It's unique," he said. "There's something about the way the colors blend and the way the brushstrokes feel full of emotion. You've captured something rare here." Arena's eyes widened. She hadn't expected that. She'd smiled, relieved, but still unsure of what the final result would be. As the awards ceremony began, Arena's mind raced. One by one, the names of the winners were announced. First place, second place, but there was no mention of her name. Just as she thought it was over, the announcer called out. And for a special mention, a young artist whose work stood out for its unique expression and emotional depth. Arena. The crowd clapped, and Arena stood frozen in place. She had not won first place, but she had been recognized. It was a victory in itself. Later, her mother hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Arena. You showed the world what you are capable of." Arena smiled, looking at her painting. It wasn't about winning, it was about showing up, about proving to herself that she was worthy. This was only the beginning. Part 6. A New Beginning. Weeks passed since the competition, and Irina felt different. The recognition had sparked something deep inside her, something she hadn't fully realized before. She was ready to create, to share her art with the world. Her work started to appear in local galleries, and slowly, people began to take notice. It wasn't just her talent that captured attention. It was the story of her persistence, her courage to defy the odds. One day, a well-known art doc curator visited one of her exhibitions. He stood in front of her painting for several minutes, then turned to Irina. "Your work has something that I haven't seen in a long time. It's raw. It's real. I'd like to offer you a chance to show your art at a larger exhibition. Are you interested?" Irina could hardly believe her ears. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it was happening, she felt overwhelmed, but with her. Mother's words echoing in her mind. Believe in yourself. She knew this was her moment. The exhibition was a turning point. People from all over came to see her work. Some were amazed at how she painted with her feet. Others simply saw the emotion, the life in each piece. It wasn't long before her paintings were being sold, and soon she was invited to showcase her art internationally. Irina had proven something powerful, not just to others, but to herself. She had discovered her voice in the world of art, and nothing could stop her now. And as she stood in front of her largest painting yet, she realized that the journey was only just beginning. The girl born without arms was now one of the most admired artists of her time. Her art spoke louder than any words ever could.